So that coffee roaster is our new Probat UG22
Mm.
coffee roaster that was built in Germany and we had shipped over in 2022 for this new roasting space that we've built on South Tacoma Way. And we had an older 1987 and smaller Probat called an L12, the 12 being the number of kilos that you can roast at a time. And we honestly just really like the style of coffee that we're able to achieve in the older German drum roasters. That kind of heat transfer that you get both from air and the drum that build delicious, full bodied, sweet coffees.
Where is it from?
It is from Emmerich in Germany.
Is it a newer unit or considered vintage?
It's a vintage style. That UG style of coffee roaster is the same original shape that they've been building since the teens,
Wow.
maybe 20s in that style. But it's built with modern air systems, controls, electronics, and valves. So that it actually has all of the modern controls of a newfangled system, but in an old style body that still achieves those classic flavors. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
Sounds great. Now we're seeing green beans brought in straight out of the bag, and I was lucky enough to see a delivery today at your loading dock. What happens when they first put it in?
well, we weigh green coffee, we drop it in a hopper, and then using a pneumatic system, it's pulled up into the hopper up above the roaster. And then we're getting the roaster, making sure the roaster's up to temperature. We're dropping it into the drum. That coffee is spinning and roasting, and in short, in 11 or so minutes, you've got a fully roasted batch of Bluebeard coffee.
So when do you know that it's done? Is it a digital, does an alarm sound, or is there a person who just can tell by the color?
I mean, in short, yes. In our old system, we were really doing everything kind of analog. We had a few measurements, but mostly you're roasting on a curve that you're trying to achieve consistency on to get the kind of sweetness and development you want. And then you're noticing often, the classic way of roasting coffee is that you're getting to what you call first crack when that coffee is hot enough that it's now releasing its water content and you hear this audible pop.
Yeah.
And forever that's been a marker for coffee because then the time post first crack is considered development time. That's when you're really seeing the colors start to go from a light brown to a dark brown to even oily and approaching black coffee. But that time is when you're building sugar levels. You're developing all those flavors that we really like, and bringing those out in the coffee. So I kind of made it as simple as possible there, even though I'm getting long-winded here. In the new system, we're both thinking about that development time. We're looking at the beans through that trier, through the probe where you can look at the beans.
Mm.
We're also thinking quite a bit about what that final temperature is based on what that coffee is. So we have more ways to judge what we want to achieve now and then repeat it than we used to have on our old system.
I can see there's a very sophisticated exhaust system on the roasting process. In fact, it really sort of takes a lot of the smells away from the roaster area. I would say it's so effective. Is that something you have that other people don't?
I mean, we do have a really nice modern system, but I think ultimately that is about the pollution control and regulation that certainly we have in the Northwest that wants to keep smoke out of the air for our employees and our customers. So modern pollution control dictates that you have, in our case, a thermal oxidizer, an afterburner that's pulling all of that exhaust air through a system that's then superheating it and releasing CO2 and water vapor rather than smoky, you know, pollution-laden smells, which lots and lots of people think are fabulous smells, but also, as I know from working in neighborhoods over the years, some people don't enjoy.
It is a polarizing thing. I tend to like it, but I have talked with people who don't. So I appreciate that. Now, you describe your coffees as clean, balanced, and coffees of character. What does that mean when you're standing at this machine?
Well, that means kind of even before we get to the machine, that when we're evaluating and buying coffees, I kind of say clean because for us, our wheelhouse is washed Latin American coffee. We
Okay.
buy lots of other coffees, but that's kind of like a thing that we buy again and again. And if you look at our coffee lineup, you're almost always going to find like 3 of those coffees there. And so those are the kinds of coffees that when you sip it, you're like, it's kind of a coffee flavored coffee. It's chocolate and caramel and maybe brown sugar, kind of sweetened and based with berry and subtleties of fruit and citrus and spice. But the kind of coffee that as you're drinking it and it cools, it's just as good cold as it was when it was hot. So a clean coffee I'd say is a coffee that cools well. And a balanced coffee is one that has that really nice interchange of body of kind of middling caramel fruit and whatever top nuances you're getting, also fruit, citrus, floral, and even herbal characteristics.
Fantastic. Now, your beans tend to be sourced from Latin America and East Africa. Is there a geographic difference on the flavors?
Yes. And then you might want to talk about like Indonesian coffees as well. And all of these things, there's generalizations about what they are, and then there's this vast array of things that we're getting from almost every country of origin, depending upon the processing that's utilized, the specific species that we're buying, and even the elevation where it's grown, and the soil, the terroir. But generally, of course, everything was originally an Ethiopian coffee. Everything that, all the Arabica coffees, I should say, that we're buying from anywhere in the world, which is everything that we buy, originally was a wild Ethiopian coffee. So all of these transplates, your Bourbons and your Caturas and your Tipicas, are all these species that have proliferated and done well in, lots of them in Latin America originally. And we really love, those 2 areas, maybe more than any, and they're traditional areas. So I love Latin America, so it makes sense that I love Latin American coffees often. But I also really like those classic, all day crushable flavor coffees that we're buying in Chiapas and in Nicaragua and all the way down into Colombia and Peru and Brazil. And we also buy a lot of Ethiopian coffee, and do a bit more work in like now. Right now we've got a Rwandan coffee in.
Wow.
And so Rwanda, Burundi, and Congolese coffee and Ugandan coffee, a lot of those kind of grow around Lake Kivu in Central Africa. And those beautiful red soils often give you kind of red tea based coffees, kind of that rooibos flavor in them. And so I think that we kind of mentioned that we like, clean coffees, coffees that maybe aren't too heavily fermented. Have you tried a natural coffee that's been described that way?
Not yet, but I plan to.
Yeah, so depending on whether a coffee has been fermented and dried with its bean on the seed that's the coffee beans, or whether that fruit has been washed off and then it stays in something called parchment, which is kind of like a peanut skin around, a silver skin around that protects the seed. Whether it's been dried that way, often will tell you how much of that kind of fruity, winey taste has been imparted to the seed. So often a natural will be really fruity, blueberry, strawberry, flavored coffee, but also a little bit more fermented and winey. These are broad generalizations. Whereas a washed coffee will be somewhat cleaner. The flavors a little bit more distinct, chalky coffee caramel. You often would probably get more acidity in those washed coffees as well. So you might notice more citrus. And that tends to be the track we spend a bit more time in, but we also love having fun natural coffees. And now there's a lot happening in fermentation where they're introducing other fruit and fruit juices and enzymes to that unprocessed coffee cherry to achieve really crazy fruity flavors into a resulting coffee. It's kind of a brave new world in coffee, and it pushes the limits of people understanding of what can come out of a coffee cherry in both good and desirable and sometimes even undesirable ways.